Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, Masechtas Bein Daf Yud Beis. We're going to begin on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, the very top of the Amud, by the new Mishnah. Beis Shammai Omrim Ein Moitziin. You're not allowed to take out Loas Akata, not a little child, Loas Lulav, Loas Sefer Torah, or Shus Rabim. You're not allowed to take any of these things into the public thoroughfare, and this is referring to on Yom Tov. Beis Hillel Matirin. He says it's not an issue. Says Rashi, Kol Mili Delav Tzarech Achila. We know when it comes to Yom Tov, there is a heter of doing certain things with Tzarech Achila. As the Mishnah in the first parak of Megillah says, the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov is with Tzarech Oichel Nefesh. All of these things that are mentioned in the Mishnah have nothing to do with food, and therefore, for that reason, apparently Beis Shammai holds the only things that are allowed to be taken out into the Rishus Harabim are things with Tzarech Oichel Nefesh. However, things that are not with Tzarech Oichel Nefesh is not allowed. Beis Hillel, for some reason, says it doesn't make any difference. You can carry anything, even things which are not with Tzarech Oichel Nefesh. You understand the reason of Beis Hillel, very famous Gemara, as we see now. Tani Tana Kamed Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Abdimi. He says the following din: Hasheichet Oilas Nedava B'Yomtiv Loka. A person shechs an ola, which of course is the carbon which is completely consumed in the mizbeach, which means no one is going to eat any of it, so it certainly is not tzarech oichel nefesh. And you did an ola which was a nedava. Now the reason why it mentions nedava, as Rashi points out, because if it's an olas chova, that's something which the Torah does allow. An olas chova, we know that karbanos are allowed to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Tov and even on Shabbos. However, an olas nedava not. Why not? Because it could have always been brought after Yom Tov. So it's considered like a davar sheshel matirin. So we're not going to allow you to bring it now on Yom Tov when it can be done afterwards. And therefore, you're going to violate the lav, as it says in Rashi or on the side, Okay, so the question is, who does that opinion like? So Omer lei Yermalach Mani Beis Shammai. L'chayra, this is only in accordance to the opinion of Beis Shammai. Yomer, and here's the famous expression: We know what tzarech oichel nefesh you're allowed to carry. So if you have some food and you want to be able to bring it outside, you're allowed to do that. So the question is, are you allowed to also bring things which are shalol tzarech? The answer is no. So what does it mean tzarech? So Rashi says, nefesh. It has to be things that you could eat. However, when it comes to a katan or lulav, a sefer Torah, that's shalol tzarech. So he does not say mitoich. The Beis Hillel ha'amri mitoich shehuter hoitzol tzarech huter nam shalol tzarech. We see clearly in our Mishnah that because one is allowed to carry outside the Rishus Harabim on Yom Tov things which are with tzarech oichel nefesh mitoich. Since we allow that, we also allow things which are shalol tzarech, and therefore hachinami, according to Beis Hillel, we would say the same thing over here. Mitoich shehutra shchita l'tzarech huter nam shalol tzarech. Since we allow you to do shchita in general, of course you're allowed to do shchita on Yom Tov. This is tzarech oichel nefesh. So too, when it comes to bringing this carbon and shechting and olas nedava, that's shalol tzarech, but we should say you're not going to get malchus because we should say the din of mitoich. So it must be that this opinion is only in accordance to the shita of Beis Shammai. So Maskim Rabbi, how do we know that that's really the foundation, the yesod of the machlokas Beis Shammai Hillel? Mamai Beis Shammai Beis Hillel b'ha pligi. How do they argue with that? Dilma be'er b'hotzol Shabbos. Maybe the machlokas is on a completely different issue when it comes to the din of an eruv and when it comes to hotzah on Yom Tov, whether there is a concept of that at all. Says Rashi, im nesra hotzah b'Yom Tov. Maybe there's just no isser of carrying one of the lamates malachos of hotzah. Maybe it just doesn't apply in Yom Tov according to Beis Hillel, or to apply the dinim of eruv chatzeros. We know that it's brought down in Masechtas Erev, and obviously great length, that if you have a chatzer in which you have two or more homes connected to that courtyard, So you want to be able to carry in that courtyard. So what you do is you put an eruvi chatzeros in one of the houses, and therefore that connects one house to the other, and therefore you actually can carry in that chutzner. Now that din maybe only applies to Shabbos, but not to Yom Tov, and therefore maybe that's the whole machlokus. Why you're allowed to carry these things? That's nothing to do with mitoich, the din of mitoich, and therefore because it only related to hotzah, maybe in fact the statement of Shechet Os Nadav B'Yom Tov actually is in accordance also to Beis Hillel, because he doesn't subscribe to this concept of mitoich. So again, maybe this is Kamiflagi where they argue Marsava Erev Hotzah Shabbos Erev Hotzah Yom Tov, which is Beis Shabbos Erev Hotzah Shabbos Ve'ein Erev Hotzah Yom Tov. Why would Beis Hillel say that? Because the pasuk says V'Yitzatziu B'Sim Batechem B'Yom Shabbos. It says a person is not allowed to bring items from their homes on Shabbos. It specifically says the word Shabbos. So maybe the diak is B'Shabbos in B'Yom Tov Lo. There's no issue of hotzah on Yom Tov. So Maskeh Rav Yosef says, okay, well, you want to tell me that that's the machlokus? Let's analyze our Mishnah a little bit more. El miyata lifiku ba'avanim. Let the Mishnah argue about stones. El midolo miflagi ba'avanim. Since our Mishnah does not argue about rocks and stones, talks about kids and lulav and a Sefer Torah, shema mina b'hoitzah shelo tzarech pligi. It must be that the machlokus is shelo tzarech. As I wrote on the side, then I'll see Rashi also. If Beis Shammai Beis Hillel argue whether it's mutter to carry altogether, then Beis Hillel should teach the bigger chiddush that even stone, something which has no use, is still mutter to carry. Since we argue about a lulav or a katan, these are things with a use, only this is mutter to carry. But everyone holds there's an isser of carrying things which have no purpose. Says Rashi, Im ein isser hotzah, ein isser tiltul shul neser tiltul elo mishum hotzah. Umashul gozru al kol tiltulim is a very powerful Rashi. So the question is, so if that's the case, why aren't they geyser on carrying in general? Mashul gozru al kol tiltulim ifil al oichlin v'kelim. Why aren't we geyser then on foods and kelim? Yishum de'in geyser gzera al tzibor el imkin rob tzibor yichol lamed ba. So again, let's look at this whole Rashi and analyze it one more time. Very important Rashi. So maybe they should argue by rocks. Im ein isser hotzah. If there's no isser of carrying at all, then you mention the case of rocks, which is very chiddush. Ein aser tiltul shul neser tiltul el mishum hotzah. So we said the whole issue of carrying is because of muksa. The muksa is related that if you start dealing with muksa, then there's an issue of carrying. So when it comes to a rock, which is muksa, that's the reason why a rock is not allowed to be carried. However, other things are allowed to be moved, even though it's possible you may end up carrying them in the Shusarabah. If we say you can't touch food, that food is muksa, and kalim are muksa, how are you going to be able to survive? It's not possible. So that's not a gzera that they would ever make. Even though the truth is muksa is directly linked to the potential of you carrying. So therefore we want to minimize the things that you're handling, because then you'll be less likely to violate hotzah. Very important Rashi. Question 12? Okay, we're not up to that yet. Okay. We're going to go back to that Rashi. I know that was one of the questions that's on one of my sheets. Okay, so therefore it must be, since he doesn't argue about Avadim, it must be that the whole machlokus is not about whether you're allowed to carry. You're not allowed to carry certain things on Yom Tov. Avadim, right? Rocks have no purpose. There has to be it has to be at least a tzarech, has to have some need. However, when it comes to a lulav, why is it allowed? Because even though it's not oichel nefesh, but mitoich doesn't mean it has no need. Doesn't mean it has no need. It has to have some utility. Otherwise, you shouldn't be allowed to carry it. It's like a vadim. Okay, weiter. We're going to also see Rabbi Yochanan holds the same thing, that the whole machlokas of why Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue is dafka in the situation of mitoich. and therefore that should apply not just when it comes to carrying, but any of the other things. The Tani Tanaka made Rav Yochanan. Hamavashal gid hanasha b'chol b'yomtiv. This guy did a whole lot of problems. What did he do? He cooked a gid hanasha, which of course the gid hanasha in itself is not able to be eaten, the sciatic nerve. But not only did you do that, but you also cooked it with milk, and it was yomtiv. The ochel, and you decided that's not enough. You're going to eat it. So laka chamesh. You're going to get 5 sets of lashes because you violated 5 laban. So what are they? First of all, there's an issue of cooking the gid. And then there's an issue that of eating the gid. You cooked milk and meat together because this gid anasha has meat in it, is meat. There's also you ate milk and meat together. And there's a whole question, Masechta Shulin, whether we say the gid anasha is nice and tam, or it's like eights, does it actually have any taste? Says Rashi, La Mishum Yomtiv the Malkus the Bishul Yomtiv Hatanile Ella Afilu Hu Chol Loka Mishum Avashal Basa B'Cholov. There's still an issue there as well. There's the Isser of Achila, Isser of Hana, Isser of Achila and Bishul. So you have that Malkus for that, for cooking the Basa B'Cholov and for eating Basa B'Cholov. The Lokin, finally, and this is the reason why I bring this down as we continue Yud Beis and Beis, Loika Mishum Havara. You're also Loika because you did a malacha that you shouldn't have done on Yom Tov. And Rashi brings down, Yishchiluk malachos Yom Tov Lilka Shtayim. Al Shtei malachos Mishum Yom Tov. So if a person does 2 malachos, you can think, well, maybe you're not going to be chayav 2 punishments. No, we say that there is a chiluk malachos, even on Yom Tov, that you can get more than 1 set of punishments. So therefore, you're chayiv for havara. So what's the whole point of that? So he says as follows: go outside and say that havara ubishul enu mishnah. This whole idea of cooking and lighting a fire is not something which should fall into this category. Why? And Rashi says, "The Yom Tov Einu Mishnah Lilkos Land." You're not going to get malchus for these things. The Metoich Shehutu L'Tzarech U'Tinami Shol L'Tzarech Min HaTorah, because since you're allowed to do it L'Tzarech in a proper way, so you are eating, so it's considered to be Shol L'Tzarech. And Tosfos asks, "V'im Taimar Umat Tzarech Ika B'Mavashal Gid Kivan Shu Aser." You're not allowed to eat it. So Yesh Leimer Kivan Shahaya B'Daito Shel Zeh L'Achlo Hainu Tzarech Yom Tov. It's a tremendous chiddush. If let's say you're eating something which is aser to eat, but you're doing L'Tzarech Yom Tov, so therefore that's considered Shelo L'Tzarech, and therefore you shouldn't get malchus on that. It's a tremendous chiddush. Havara Bishul Einu Mishnah, the Imtim Saloimer Mishnah. Maybe you should include them. Beishamahi. Then we'd have to say it's like Beishami. The Amri Lo Amrina Mitaych Shehutra Hoitzol L'Tzarech Hutanami Shol L'Tzarech. Hachanami. Go to here Lo Amrina Mitaych Shehutra Havara. Making a fire, or not making a fire necessarily, but actually cooking with a fire. L'Tzarech Hutanami Shol L'Tzarech. The Beis Hillel Kivan the Amri Mitaych Shehutra Hoitzol L'Tzarech Hutanami Shol L'Tzarech. Hachanami Mitaych Shehutra Havara L'Tzarech Hutanami Shol L'Tzarech. Again. So this is a raya that the whole machlokas between Beis Shammai and Hillel is specifically the din of mitoich. Okay, all right. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's look at a couple other questions. Let's look at TA 17. Hamavashal gid hanasha b'yomtiv. Person who cooks the gid hanasha on yomtiv. Hi'im loika umazet toloi. So is he going to get malchus or not? And of course, the fact that it says it sounds like the machlokas. And the question is, it's totally machlokas Beis Shammai's Hillel, whether we say mitoich. Since Beis Shammai does not hold a mitoich, you will get malchus. And according to the Shita of Beis Hillel, you will not get malchus because of the din of mitoich. Okay, so that again is the Beis Shammai who does not say mitoich shehuter hoitzol l'tzarech hutam shel l'tzarech hachanami. Lo yamrin in mitosh havar l'tzarech hutu nami shol l'tzarech. Okay. Because if it's like Beis Hillel, he would say, okay, that was TA 17. Okay, let's see, TB 20. Oh, this was the question. Beautiful question that was asked here. Not an easy one because you need to know this Rashi. If the whole issue of carrying is because of muksa is because it's connected to carrying, they should answer everything, which is hard to even understand how you could possibly answer as muksa, because muksa is related to hotzah, anything, right? But again, the quote of Rashi, so I'm assuming that's exactly how they quoted it. Exactly. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's continue. We'll just do this, and now let's see the next Mishnah. Beishami Omer. Okay, we're in Yud Beis and Yud Beis. Beishami Omer. Ein moilichin chala umatanas hakoyin b'yamtiv. A person is not allowed. We're going to say it's a three-way machlokus over here in the Gemara. Exactly what this machlokus is. You're not allowed to bring challah, not a delicious challah, but the challah that's removed to give to a kohen, umatanos, in which Rashi reminds us, referring to Hazor v'chaim akeva, as Rabbi Gibber would call it, the maw upon the jaw, the arm, the jaw of the animal, and it's part of its stomach, known as the maw. So the din is, it's not talking about separating them. It means it's already separated. This is what it's talking about. You'll see this at greater length in the Gemara. But the Mishnah's Pashut seems like it was already separated. And the question is, are you allowed to now on Yom Tov give it to a Kohen? So Beis Shammai says, Ein molichin chal matanos a Kohen b'Yom Tov, bein shehurmu me'emesh, and here it says it, whether or not it was separated already from yesterday, on Erev Yom Tov, bein shehurmu me'hayoyim, or it was separated today. Now, we're going to see that when it comes to matanos and challah, again, what's eichel nefesh, you're allowed to make bread and bake bread on Yom Tov. You're allowed to shecht an animal on Yom Tov. Now, if you're allowed to bake bread, it stands to reason you should also be able to take challah off on Yom Tov. And since you're allowed to shecht on Yom Tov, it makes sense that you should be able to take these various matanos, which need to be separated, also on Yom Tov. Now, Rashi tells us it's really not the normal concept of tevel, that typically when you have tevel, you cannot eat it until you separate your trumas and maasros. When it comes to Zerah Chaim Akeva, the din is not the same. Nonetheless, because you're allowed to shecht and Yom Tov, we allow you to do the separation also of the matanos. Okay, back in the Gemara or Mishnah, Beis Hillel matir. So again, Beis Hillel says it's not a problem. You can give challah and the matanos to the kohen on Yom Tov. So Amar Lehen Beis Shammai, Gezer Shava. Now Rashi says it's not really a true Gezer Shava as we understand it, because it's din d'Rabbanan, but it just means let's make this connection and comparison between two things. Challah matanos. Matana l'kohen. When it comes to challah and matanos, those are gifts that are given to a kohen. Utruma matana l'kohen. Also, when it comes to truma, that is one of the 24 matnas kahuna that we give 1/50th to the kohen, which is the truma gedola. Kashem shein malichin as a truma. So just like you're not allowed to give truma to the kohen on Yom Tov, says Rashi, Diboha modisu one. You agree to me, Beis Hillel. Sher me'esmol hoigva. Since you separated it already from yesterday, so you should have also given it to him yesterday. So you're not allowed to separate truma today. So the din is, since you separated already yesterday, when it comes to truma, you can't give it today. You have to give it on Erev Yom Tov. So kachin melichin esa matanos. So too, you're not allowed to give matanos to him on Yom Tov either. So I'm going to Beis Hillel 1 second. Low. As we mentioned on truma, you can't separate it on Yom Tov. There's an issue of it has the appearance as though you're masakin kli. You're fixing Misakin Monday. You're fixing something. So therefore, since it had to be done on Erev Yom Tov, so therefore it makes sense. The Truma has to be given on Erev Yom Tov. You're right. I agree. It should not be given, cannot be given on Yom Tov itself. However, when it comes to Challah and the Matanos, the Zerah Chaim V'Keva, you're allowed to separate them on Yom Tov. So since you can separate them on Yom Tov, it must mean you should probably give it also on Yom Tov. Okay. Which is a pretty logical answer that Beis Hillel gives. Now, we're talking about a situation where it was separated today and shechted today. And it was separated today, yesterday, shechted yesterday. Mani masnisin. So who's our Mishnah like? Lo Rav Yosi, Lo Rav Yehuda, El Acher. Out of this three-way machlokas, which I promise we'll see, which we'll see now, it sounds like the sheet of the Acher, the Sanya. Rav Yehuda. So first of all, what is the sheet of Rav Yehuda? Since it says not like Rav Yosi, not like Rav Yehuda, but like the Acher. And then he quotes Rav Yehuda first. We're going to end up passing Rav Yosi, that's why he's mentioned first. We'll see. Rav Yehuda. L'nechel beisham beis Hillel in our Mishnah al hamatanos shehumu me'erev Yom Tov. When it comes to gifts, when it comes to Zerah Chaim V'Keva, let's say you separate them already before Yom Tov, shmoilichin im hamatanos shehumu mehayoyim. And let's say you shechted on Yom Tov and you separated other Zerah Chaim V'Keva. So in that situation, when it comes to these different gifts that some were separated yesterday and some are separated today, and they're all commingled together, so you're allowed to give them to the Kohen today on Yom Tov, because some of it was from Erev Yom Tov and some of it's from Yom Tov, so it's not a problem. The whole Machlos Meshach Hillel is a Halichin B'fni Atzman. Are you allowed to only bring the ones that were separated from yesterday today? Shebei Shammai Omrim Ein Moilichin, Beis Hillel Omrim Moilichin. So that's where the machlokas is. But if there were some from yesterday and some from today, so we allow you to bring it. If there was all of them were from yesterday, that's where the machlokas is. This is how he makes this connection. Matan l'kohen, v'truma matan l'kohen. They're both gifts. Kishem shemalichin es a truma, just like you can't give truma on Yom Tov, kach ein molichin es a matanos. So you can't give these gifts on Yom Tov. Shamahim Beis Hillel lo. Ima martim b'truma shenu zakeh b'harmasa. As we said, you're now to separate it on Yom Tov. Tamer b'matanos shezakeh b'harmasa. Okay, so that's one opinion. Again, the opinion of Rav Yehuda that the whole machlokus is dafke if it's b'fnei atzman. If they're commingled, they're all mixed together, so then everyone holds you can give it. Rav Yosi, and this is one. Let's make sure we know this. L'nechel beisham Beis Hillel al hamatanos shemaylichin. There is no question when it comes to matanos in general that you can always give it. L'nechel el al hatruma. Actually, the machlokus is regarding truma. Shebei Shammai omrim ein moilichin, Beis Hillel omrim molichin. Amazingly, Beis Hillel holds that even when it comes to truma, which of course cannot be separated on Yom Tov, if it was separated on Erev Yom Tov, you could even give it to the Kohen on Yom Tov. It's a tremendous chiddush of Rabbi Yosi. V'kach hayu Beis Hillel danin chal matanos. Matan l'kohen v'truma matan l'kohen. Kishem shemayilichin es matanos, kach malichin es truma. Just like you can give matanos, you can also give truma. Sharmohen Beis Shammai lo ima martin b'matanos. So you can hear how it kind of flips around. He says Beis Shammai is the one who says no. Ima martin b'matanos shezakeh b'harmasan. I can understand why we can give Zerah Chaim V'Keva on Yom Tov is because you're allowed to have separated them on Yom Tov. Tamer b'truma shein zakeh b'harmasan. So again, it's a tremendous chiddush that the machlokas is by truma, whether you can give the truma. Okay. No, they don't argue when it comes to truma. Shein moilichin. That you cannot do because you can't separate it on Yom Tov. If you separate it on Erev Yom Tov, you should have given it to him on Erev Yom Tov. The fact that now it's Yom Tov, you can't give it to him. So what's the machlokas? El hamatanos, which, as we're saying, is what the Mishnah says. The machlokas is giving the Zerah Chaim V'Keva today on Yom Tov. Period. So le'macherim hibul Rabbi Yehuda. Let's say that our Mishnah is like the Cherim and not like Rabbi Yehuda, because again Rabbi Yehuda says The whole machlokus is not if it commingled, that's allowed. The whole machlokus is if it was only from yesterday, and now you want to bring it today. So Amru Rava Mikatani Shahumu Mahayoim and Ishchatu Mahayoim. Shahumu Katani, it just says was separated. Well, Oilam Shchitas and the Emesh. Our Mishnah always is talking that the Shchita was from yesterday. So therefore, in fact, it could be that that's the machlokus from the Emesh. That we're talking about again that which was separated from yesterday. That was separated from yesterday. So Leima Rabbi Huda Hibo Acherim. So then in that case, let's say they were the way around. Let's say it's Rabbi Huda. Now feel Tema Acherim V'Hanach the Nishchatu Emesh. It's referring to from that which was shechted from yesterday. Yihachi Han Rabbi Huda Yigbenayu Tefela. Again, the whole machlokus is this concept of tefela if they're mixed in together. According to Rabbi Huda, as we mentioned, maters latapel, that you can give them together, says Rashi, v'hoylech shel emesh, im shel hayoim, v'chem sabri defil latapel nami asri. He doesn't even allow if it's commingled. Fine. Okay. Let's maybe see a couple of questions here. Question 12. Be'ez oifen, pligi be'sham be'ez hillel, im boilichin l'koyin matanos, whether or not you can give gifts to the Kohen is over Chavakeva, according to Rabbi Huda and Echerim. So according to Rabbi Huda, the whole machlokis is giving the matanos that were from Erev Yom Tov, that were already separated from Erev Yom Tov, by themselves. If it was mixed together with that which was from Yom Tov, that's allowed. The Echerim say no. Apple tapel, even if they're mixed together, that they also argue about. Okay. That was question 12. Okay, let's now turn to some of Rabbi Gibber's questions. We did that one from last time. Let's see. He has a question. Eich Yesh lefarish dibri beis Hillel d'sril lehatu l'hoitzas akatan v'salula that's Sefer Torah. So one is because he holds mitosh shehutu l'hoitzah l'tzorchot and amishol l'tzarech, or beis Hillel holds the only isser of hotzah is dafka on Shabbos but not on Yom Tov. Mikoich eze kushya hachriya hagemara as pshat beis Hillel hanal. So he, as we said before, the machlokus was that on Yom Tov there's no issue of carrying. So then let her argue by stones, which has no purpose, and still holds its mutter to carry. Since they don't argue about this, it must be it's because of mitaych. So this is what I wrote. When it comes to matanos, this is according to the Shita Rabbi Huda. Everyone holds if you shecht and separate it on Yom Tov, you could give it to a Kohen. You also can do tefillah with ones from yesterday. The machlokus is by bringing the ones shechted from yesterday, can you bring them by itself? Truma, everyone holds you cannot bring. Rabbi Yossi says that everyone holds you could bring matanos, so machlokus is by bringing truma, and Rabbi Echerim say that the same thing as Rabbi Huda, they only don't agree whether you can do tefillah. Okay. Great. Great answer. Okay. Let's continue with the next Gemara. We're up to the two dots. Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Shmuel. Halacha Rabbi Yossi. As I promised you, I'm not sure why there's the two dots there, but the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. So what was Rabbi Yossi's shita? So he said Rabbi Yossi is this novel concept that the whole machlokus is dafka when it comes to truma, whether or not you're able to actually give truma on Yom Tov, which of course was separated from Erev Yom Tov. However, when it comes to the matanos, everyone, according to him, Beis Shammai still agree it's not a problem. So that's a tremendous chiddush, but that's what we're saying. We pass like Rabbi Yossi, which again we typically pass like Rabbi Yossi. Rav Tovi bered Rav Nechemia havli garb the chamra. So he had a barrel of wine to truma. So obviously the question is, if he has truma, is he allowed to give it to the kohen? So Asla coming to Rav Yosef, Ramalei, Mahu Lam Tabi Kohen. What's the din? Am I able to give it to a kohen today? So Ramalei Hachim Rabbi Huda Mishmul Halach Rav Yossi, which means yes, you can. Yes, you can. Next story. Ushbazina de Rava, when it came to the guest of Rava, Barav Chanan, Havile Osuryasa de Chardala. So you had this bundle of mustard seeds. Okay? He had a bundle of mustard seeds. Says Rashi, Chavilo shel Chardal. Fine. Armalei Mahu, what's the din? Lafruchi, can I crush these pods, umechol minayhu b'yamtiv, and eat its seeds on yamtiv? So L'havaviyadeh, he didn't know the answer to that. Before we continue, let's look at Rashi. So he said, are you allowed to, again, crush these ears of grain, these pods, in order to be able to eat what's inside? So Rashi says like this. Mishar b'yamtiv, is it kashchita, ukabishal? We know you're allowed to do shchita, you're allowed to cook, so maybe you should do this too. O Dilma. Kivan de Efshem Erev Yomtiv Lo, that told us Dishahu. There's an issue of dash. Now, the things that you're allowed to do on Yomtiv is the Sarach HaNefesh. Cooking, shechting, because it's fresh meat. You'd rather have it that way on Yomtiv. However, this is something that could be done before Yomtiv. You could have threshed it and done all this. Again, he wished to separate the chaff from the kernels, but that considers it's like either winnowing or it's a form of threshing. It's disha. So also Gamei the Rava, Armalei Moilin Malilois, a person is allowed to crush ears of grain, Farchin Kitnios Biyamtiv, and also you can crack open Kitnios legumes on Yamtiv. So therefore, that's clearly the heter. It's permissible. Now the question is, why? So as we'll understand that the whole issue on Shabbos of Disha is there's an issue of threshing. But if you are moilin malilos, you crush it in this unusual way. It's what's called Disha Kliyachar Yad. It's done in an unusual way, because it's Kliyachar Yad, it no longer falls under the Issa Deraisa of Dash. It now goes to a stage lower, Derabanan. And therefore, since it's done an indirect way on Shabbos, so therefore on Yom Tiv it is completely mutter. So he asked the question, Hamoyel Malilos Me'erev Shabbos. And he says, on Erev Shabbos, you were the Moyel Malilos, you rolled and crushed these ears of grain. Well, Machar, the next day, Menafich Miyad Liyad, you could blow from hand to hand. To Oichel, and then you can eat it. Of a little bit Kanoin, a little bit Tamcholi. You're now to use these kalim, which are miyuchid specifically for separations. That's something which you are not allowed to use. Okay, whether a funnel or Rashi says a tamcholi is a ka'ara gadol, like a big plate. Hamoyel malilos erev yomtiv. That was erev Shabbos. If a person rolls on erev yomtiv, Machar menafech al yad. Instead of saying miyad liyad, it says al yad, which is ma'at, a small amount, which is less of a shinoi than doing it on Shabbos, which we require miyad liyad, from hand to hand. Al yad just means you do it a little bit at a time. In this situation, we allow even these kalim of a little bit tav, a little bit nafa, a little bit kavra of erev yomtiv in b'yomtiv lo. So before we get to the question, we allow these different kalim, provided that again they're not ones which are specific. The naf and the kavra are mamish. It's not just like a big plate, but these are mamish used for the purpose of dash. That's certainly not allowed. Okay, but what do we see? That you're supposed to do these things dafka on erev yomtiv. It's very clear, which is telling you you're not allowed to be moil malilos on yomtiv. The truth is you're allowed to do this on yomtiv, as we said, because it's disha kliyachar yad. The idea that Tani Reshim erev Shabbos Tani Sefanami erev yomtiv, because on Shabbos for sure you can't do it, but on yomtiv we allow it to be done. Im kain matzinu true. So period. So im kain, if that's true, that you're allowed to be moil malilos, and all of a sudden it's something which you couldn't eat, now all of a sudden you can eat. Matzinu truma shazakai bahar masa. We find that by rolling this on Yom Tiv, truma actually has a possibility of being separated. Says Rashi, the stam shvolim, when it comes to these stalks, lo mafreshin and truma, we do not separate anything, ad shiasu dogam, until it becomes grain. V'hamoyelin b'yomtiv, when a person rolls it and creates these kernels, l'ochlin, to eat them, mafresh mehem truma al karcha. So we're forced to say that he's being mafresh truma. So if we allow you to be moyel malilos, so obviously it shows you could actually separate truma and yomtiv. I thought we said you're not allowed to, but it's not low. Imamartim truma she'enu zakeh b'harmasa. You're not allowed to separate truma and yomtiv, but when you're moyel malilos, apparently that's allowed. So kasha, as we continue, Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, ha Rabbi he. This is like Rabbi. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda the Sanya. Hichnes shivolin. If a person brings in these stalks, to make dough, upater. He allows you to eat them, provided it's a temporary level of eating, and it is allowed. That is allowed to be done. Says Rashi. Lo Matzinu Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, the Omer ein truma b'malilos. That basically, as we're going to see, you're not chayav to give truma if all you're doing is doing malilos. Well, moyelin b'malilos, Rabbi Machayev, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda poiter. So therefore, the whole thing. Oh, so if you're moyel malilos, so you have to give up truma. It's not true. According to this opinion, that's considered to be an achilas arai, and therefore, since it's achilas arai, you don't have to take up truma. The only chiyav of truma is once you set it as achilas keva. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, nami mishkachas law, kigoyin shehichnas shivon lasais mehen isa. Let's say a person has the intention initially to make into dough, and then you change your mind to roll them b'yomtiv. B'yomtiv, the tabel b'yomi. It's considered to be tevel on that day. So notice you brought the stalks of grain into your house to make them into dough. So this would make it chayiv in truma midaraisa. So because it's like considered to be kavua. Then you change your mind, and then you wish to use it only for malilos. So even though malilos in general is an arai, but in this case, the malilos will be considered the gemar malacha, and you would be chayav to give truma. So we see, in fact, there is a possibility of truma. The answer is elamai truma, rov truma. You're right. In this circumstance, it is true that a person is able to separate truma in this circumstance, being moel malilos. However, because typically this is not something which is a normal circumstance, therefore we're not going to say, oh yeah, by truma we let it separate it, because typically we don't do it. It's only under this unusual circumstance that it's allowed. It says Rashi, when you bring it into your house for the sake of a goyrin, yardulehen turis trumas umaisrus, it falls upon itself the chiyuv right there. There's nothing you do about it. Even if, let's say, you just want to roll it, which is a rai, nasis hachnisasu goyrin umoilin biyamtiv al korcho kodim trumasa. So again, the problem is that clearly it's chayiv in truma, in separation, and that's what you're doing, and the answer is okay, but normally that's not the case. Okay, we're going to stop there. Hopefully we saw most of the questions. Let's see. Question 13. Right, question 13. Elu beis devarim nechvu mehem begemara im nikvu l'maiser b'shivolin. Now, we saw on Yud Beis and Beis this, but it could possibly also be, we're going to see this also a little bit tomorrow, but the machlokus is we're going to end up seeing, again, when it comes to eating a little bit alidei malilos by rolling it, by removing the chaff off and for the kernels, and also by kidneys, by legumes. So when it comes to those things, we're going to see, is that nikvul a meiser or not? So again, we're going to talk more about moil malilos in tomorrow's daf. Okay, let's see, maybe we have a couple more questions. TA 18. Meiser Rishon Shekdima B'Shibolim. Okay, that's something which we will see, again, not in today's daf. 21. Mahu Litkle Shchitim. Okay, that again will be in tomorrow's daf. Let's just see a couple more Rabbi Gimber's questions. Be'ezet Seir Mutter L'Harim Truma B'Yomtiv. when are you actually allowed to separate truma and Yom Tov? So Lafi Rebbe, if you're moyel malilos, if you're crushing ears of grain, then you, according to him, you're chayiv. Lafi Rav Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, the only time is if your original intention was to make it into dough. So the chayiv of truma would fall on it. Now you wish to take them to crush. Still now it's a gemar malacha with dagan, and therefore you're allowed to separate truma in that circumstance on Yom Tov.